Hi, everybody. Welcome to Photo Night. My name is Megan Leiden. I'm the senior editor for photography and multimedia at The Post. Is that good? Better? All right, I'll yell. I'm going to start off by showing you one of our video journalists, Vince Chandler, did a series of videos called Finding Broncos Country. And I'm going to start off with some of the highlights from that.
The Broncos have actually helped me with my battle against cancer too. I mean, it's kind of weird to say, but I'm so into it.
Denver is the only stadium in the entire National Football League that sort of epitomizes what the team is about. There's the Bronco, they are the Broncos.
The Broncos band, we've been out here for about 6 years. We roam the parking lots and hang out with the tailgaters before the game.
Because I'm a sports fan, I'm a Colorado guy, and I love the Broncos, and I love the Nuggets, and I love the Buffs. So to be able to actually be part of the atmosphere and part of the presentation and the entertainment is just a dream come true.
Ride a sheep? No. You're gonna grab onto the wool, okay? Just like I'm grabbing onto your coat. And don't let go. Okay. Wrap your legs around it as tight as you can. Okay. Alright? Alright. Perfect.
My mom was, when I was in basic training and stuff, she was sending me, instead of sending me letters that I love you and stuff like that, I was requesting letters of mini camp notes.
Bronco gang is dope, man. It's my favorite thing I've ever done in life other than make my child. And everybody should be a part of it.
So Vince did a great job this year. I asked him to go out and find, for every week that the Broncos played, I asked him to go out and find a story of a person who worked the game or a view of the game that nobody else got to see. And so he's got I think he has about 12 videos up, denverpost.com/finding Broncos country. And you can go watch all of them if you want. So first, I wanted to introduce, we have two of our Broncos beat writers here tonight, Nikki and Cameron. Not sure where they are, but they'll be available in the lobby for questions. If you have any questions, or afterwards we'll do a Q&A, and they can answer any questions you have about following this team around this year. So I'm going to bring up John Leba. Where's he at? Come on up. And Joe Amon. Joe Amon. Calling Joe Amon. Helen Richardson. Aaron Ontiveros. And our awesome stand-in this year, Eric Lutzens. And they're going to tell you this about what it takes to cover a season, Super Bowl season.
What you want, what you want. Come on. What you want, what you want. Come on. What you want. Come on. What you want. Come on.
Wow, how about some clap? How about some cheers there? That gives me goosebumps every time I see it. Yep, that's me, the old guy. For those of you who didn't know, I was coming back from an injury sustained back in August. And I pretty much missed the whole Broncos season except for the last 2 games, which the most important games in the season. So that's me growing up. I credit Aaron with all this stuff. Aaron did a good job with this. This is my first years at the Denver Post. I was 19 and getting squished out by Peyton Manning. Just to go back about the little injury that I had, I was in the hospital for a couple weeks and pretty much couch ridden for about 3.5 months. So, and in that time I was couch ridden, every Sunday I would find myself watching the damn games on TV, which I've never done in my 32 years at the Denver Post. I found myself not watching the game. I was watching the photographers to see where everybody was at, to make sure they were in the right positions and stuff. And every time a big play would happen, I always say, well, I wonder which photographer got that, whether it be Aaron or Helen or Joe. If you want copies of this, please see Aaron Ontiveros at the end of this. I'll be glad to sign it. And it was really tough watching the games at home, you know. It was because I really wanted to be out there. Covering this team for 32 years is kind of an accomplishment for myself. And this is probably one of the last ever portraits that we ever did with any of the Broncos players. Now they're just untouchable. We can't do any of this stuff anymore. They don't like it. And Terrell Davis, he yelled at me for taking this photo. Don't know why. And probably one of my favorite photos from all the years covering the Broncos is probably Always Win, MVP. And this is my return back to the field. It was November 29th, I believe, against... No, it was against, it was a championship game, actually, against the Patriots. But my return back to the stadium was November 29th when I was stuck in the back with Megan editing all these photos, these great, wonderful photos that these photographers are shooting for every game. And I had the opportunity to hand over the reins to Eric, who did a lot of shooting for me while I was recovering from this injury. So these are my images from the championship game. Yeah, he deserves it too, I think so. And then after a long run like this, you always go for the air. And shooting football is really sometimes can be challenging, but if you know what's going on around you, stuff like this comes natural. You're always looking for stuff on the sideline. No matter what time of the game is going or timeouts, you're always looking for stuff on the sideline. And this was a timeout, and I just looked over, and Gronkowski was over there, sucking down air. End of the game. You always try to follow, something important that's going to, tell the whole story of the game. I think this was like the end of the game, and at the end of the overtime. Was it overtime? And Manny's farewell to Invesco Field at Mile High. But to go back to being at home and watching TV while recovering from my injury, and I think the photo staff did a really great job of coming through and providing everybody with all these great images that they shot throughout the year. And Eric, hands down to Eric, who stepped in and shot quite a few games for us while I was recovering. But if I ever come down with an injury, I'm going out there shooting with this injury, because being stuck in the back editing, 10,000 photos is not a good thing. It's horrible. Never want to do that again. But I had a really good time doing it, and I got to spend a lot of time with friends in the back that I never get to see, because I'm always out in the field. And I think Megan and I established a really close bond. Eating stuff here and there. Snacking on peanuts and cookies and stuff that we sneak down from the press box. But when I came back, I had the option either to go back shooting or stay editing. And I told Megan I wanted to come back shooting. And I came back for the championship game and ended up going to the Super Bowl. And it was so much fun. I think it was my 7th Super Bowl with this team. So it was kind of a been there, done that kind of thing, but it was really, really cool to go back again and to see this team win the Super Bowl. Not like it was in New York, where it was just, one play and they're done. I use that term loosely. But it was a great season, and to follow Peyton Manning throughout his 3 or 4 years of a career here was phenomenal. But like I said, it's great to be back out there, and hopefully I don't get sick again or come down with an injury. Now I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Ontiveros, and I got to hand it to Aaron. He came through in a pinch because I couldn't travel with Joe this year, so we had to do all of our rearranging of flights and hotels and just getting him on board to go on the road with Joe, because I couldn't do it anymore, at least for those first half of the season. And then he pulled through, and he'd always call me from the airport saying, "I'm stuck here. What do I do? Or who do I call because I need to change my flight?" I'm like, "Aaron, come on now. You're a grown boy. You know how to do this kind of stuff. Oh, which hotel should I pick? I don't know. It's up to you. Pick the Clarion. I don't care." But he pulled through and did a fantastic job on the road. So here's to Aaron. He trimmed his beard for this occasion, just to let you know.
So as John said, I came in this season after he had his injury and took on the role of traveling with Joe and going out to all the road games and getting to eat all the fine food America has to offer. They always play it up like there's a lot of glamour and glitz out there on the road, and I got to experience. Yeah. This is better? So they said out on the road there's a lot of glamour and glitz, and I got to experience a little bit of that as I traveled across America. I'm glad to see people are still sort of reading newspapers. He at least made a clipping of one there doing the crossword. A lot of it was spent standing in lines at airports and traveling. We took a lot of flights, went to a lot of places, and as a result, my roller case that carries my camera equipment, the wheels broke down on it and completely kind of rotted off. Like I said, we got to travel around the country and do a lot of fun stuff and do a lot of good eating, but mostly I just stayed in my hotel room and ate bags of donuts. I think that was key, staying well fed and being prepared for the shots. I like to keep food available at all times, just in case. But sometimes you eat a little too much and end up squatted down on the street for a few hours, not feeling so great. It was a good season. I think it was a lot of fun. It was a good learning experience getting to go out on the road, learning from Joe, seeing how he does things, taking pictures of all the different stadiums across the country was fun. And here's some of my favorites from throughout the year. Sometimes you have to break a few of the rules. We're not allowed to stand in certain places, so I kind of hide out and wait until something's happening, get the shot, and then immediately after get kicked out for doing it. This was one of those moments. We're not allowed near these flamethrowers because they might burn off your hair or eyebrows. I wasn't too concerned about that. Just always kind of looking for stuff in between the plays is what I like to do. There's a lot of action happening. So this was just running off the field after Brock had taken over the team, and I thought the light looked nice on him. He looked good and regal and kind of like a leader there, and snagged this real quickly. And it's fun going to some of these other stadiums because you get different types of access that you don't always get at your home stadium. We're not allowed back in the back hallways or tunnels or anything like that here at Mile High. This was at Qualcomm in San Diego. I think it's still called Qualcomm, I'm not sure. But this was in San Diego, and the players actually came out the same hallway that we were coming out from the workroom, which was kind of nice because we got to go in the same spots that they were in and got this little moment of Danny Trevathan as he was getting ready to take the field. This was in Cleveland. This is one of the Browns players coming out for the intros. And it's fun. Like I said, there's different access in different places, so it's fun to get a play and do different things every time you travel somewhere, as opposed to just trying to do the same thing from the same spot. I like to experiment and see what we can do out on the road. Thought this was a nice little feature. These boys were just waiting to get autographs before a game, hanging out early in the season, which I always think is fun, trying to shoot fan shots and just see the excitement and the anticipation on their faces. And then, of course, there is action. This was when Von Miller, I believe, recovered a fumble to seal the game against the Vikings earlier this season. And the way we set up our shooting rotation is each of us are in a corner of the field, so it's split into quadrants. And it makes it nice because when something happens, we're always on a side of the ball where the play is going to be. And so there was someone to my left here, and there were two people downfield across the way. And we all have this from different angles. So it's nice to be able to shoot the moments that define a game and make sure that we have it at the appropriate angle. This was Demaryius Thomas contemplating not catching a ball. There were dark days for him at times. And again, I'm just always kind of looking for the mood in the moment and seeing what's happening on the sidelines, because there's a lot of stuff happening there that people can't see. There was a photographer who once said to me that, there's a lot of action and anyone can go out and shoot the action, but there's moments in between that you shoot, and that's what makes you a storyteller or a photojournalist, is that you're able to see the stuff that's going on beyond the play. This is one of those examples. Peyton wasn't playing so well in this game against the Chiefs, and I noticed that there was some stuff going on the sideline, so I ran over to see what was happening, and Brock was warming up, and this was the possession that Peyton didn't go back out on the field. You can see him there taking a look towards Brock, expecting to get back out on the field, but it ended up not happening there. And again, the quadrant system paid off because this was the game against the New England Patriots that went into overtime, and we're each in a position on the field, and C.J. Anderson broke this run to the outside, and as soon as he broke it, I switched lenses and got ready, shot this shot of him celebrating, and the game was over. And it was just lucky because I was 60 yards away or so from the play, but it ended up coming right at me and being in the position on the field I was at. And so these guys celebrated right there. And I don't think anyone else got these shots because we were the only one with a 4-person team covering every spot on the field. There were other people up on the 30-yard line along the sidelines and whatnot, but nobody was down there with me except for one TV guy, and we were the only two there when this play took place. So, I think it's a credit to John and the people who put this into place to make sure that the game is shot in a way that we're able to tell the story as completely as we possibly can. And with that, I will give you guys Joe Amon.
This is about us traveling, and I got to travel with Aaron this year instead of John. And I got to tell you, Aaron doesn't drink. So we did a lot of eating. But first, starting some years ago, what? Really? Loud up here, man. I'll try. Is this better? No? Hold it closer. Really? You guys, all right. Some years ago when I started flying and I started using Facebook, I would take little pictures while I'm waiting because we have a lot of waiting time in airports. So I get a lot of Southwest this year because that's who we flew. I used to always take a picture of whatever drink I was drinking and my cigarettes and put it out. And so when I stopped doing that, people on Facebook would say, man, where's your cigarette pictures? So I put them in there. And then people that don't smoke were giving me a hell of a time. Why are you smoking cigarettes? So I started just taking silly little pictures of the airport as things are going on. And this is just all our travel time. Aaron was right about a lot of times there's waiting, but sometimes, guys, there ain't no waiting at all when you get there early enough. I still like cigarettes, so sorry. I can't believe how many of these silly pictures are in here. Aaron eating, which turned out to be pretty good because we went to this place in Kansas City, and you're guaranteed, like at least one night you get to eat good food when you're on the road. Because really, actually, there's a lot of hassles, a lot of waiting. You got to deal with taxis, you got to deal with hotels. Sometimes you get to deal with other things. There's a reason that stuff on the road stays on the road. But we're eating in Kansas City, and Aaron, I mean, as you all have seen, is a fit young man. And that night he put down, good God, more barbecue than I'd seen, a lot of people eat. And so he gets halfway through, and all of a sudden I start hearing this, and he started sweating. It was great fun traveling with Aaron. We get to see a lot of places, and for me personally, getting to see a lot of these stadiums. Like I think now, after this year, I've got to shoot in every stadium in the NFL. And I've loved football since I was a boy. And just going to these places makes this just amazing for me to get to go and shoot football in these places. Also, I'm a Steeler fan. I don't want to hear anything except for those claps. I'm good with that. But for this year, got a long time ago, when I started, I used to cover the Steelers. I didn't get to go back until this year and actually shoot in that new stadium. And I just lost my mind. These next pictures are some of my favorite. I don't think they're the best pictures in the world. But I really like hits, and I love hitting in football. And some of these quarterbacks, I really like seeing get hit more than others. This was very special to me this year. I enjoyed this. But as Aaron was talking about, we all cover different sides of the field, and we're always looking for different pictures. And sometimes it's just really nice to be able to make something pretty. You know you're covered, people have your back, and you're able to shoot wide, and not be looking for, dead tight stuff, even though I truly enjoy dead tight hitting pictures. Just excites hell out of me. I don't know about Brock, but I sort of enjoyed this too. I know you guys are all Bronco fans, but I was all right with that. And following Thomas this year was crazy because you expect so much. And seeing him go up and down and being on the sidelines, you get to see what these guys are feeling. You can tell when they're down or when they think they're the best in the world. His stuff this year, as you saw from Aaron's, was just a huge roller coaster ride following that man. And then again, there's hitting. I'm all about this. Mr. Wolf turned out to be just an animal on the field also. For such a big man, he was so fast. And he really hit some people that I enjoyed watching him hit. I just love this man. And actually, at that playoff game where this man came out and made those 2 touchdowns, it was amazingly special to me. It's nice to be able to make these pictures. Now, this guy's not always that, emotional or showing you stuff. But this little Superman look, I thought that was funny. Now, this last picture came from Pittsburgh, and I'm going to tell you, there was only a few of us that got this because we happened to be in the right place when he was being helped off the field by a Trevathian. But what makes it special for me is if you look on that side in the back, by going home to shoot in this field, my son got to be my runner. And that made my whole season. So with that, you guys, I know it wasn't much about football or cameras, but I enjoyed talking to you. Next, I'm going to call up Helen.
Okay, so by now you guys are realizing Aaron has a great sense of humor, and he's the one who put the whole flow of this slideshow together. And when he said out of retirement, I haven't shot football in probably 13 years. When I used to shoot a lot of football, and then times changed, and we got new leadership, and so Tim came in, and when he came in, he changed the way we did football, which is pretty cool. He really organized it in a way it had never been organized before. So as Aaron was talking about, he had people in, and maybe it was John as well helping, but people in every single quadrant. So northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. So even if there's nothing going on at your end of the field, there could be a breakaway when somebody gets a 100-yard punt return and scores a goal or scores a touchdown, and you're there. So we had people on all sides of the field. So leadership changed. Tim left. A few other photographers are no longer here, and so Megan asked if I wanted to shoot football. So that's why I'm sort of coming out of retirement. And so of course I wanted to be able to take the opportunity to shoot football. I was really excited about it, but also a little nervous about it. And also it was a big year to have come back to football. These slides are showing Aaron wanted to make me feel old, and he said, "This is the last time I shot football. This is how young Eli Manning and Peyton were." So and times have changed. Same thing. And, so he's suggesting it's been a long time since I shot football, and this was the cultural stuff that was going on. Facebook just starting. So I'm not, your friends was big then, way back when, 2004. Bennifer, how could we forget Bennifer? So really, it's not that long ago, but I guess Aaron said he was in high school, so it was a long time ago. So anyway, shooting football is a challenge. I'm sort of humbled. I was very humbled being there because these guys are great photographers, and they look at things really differently. And so coming back, it seems like football's gotten a lot faster, a lot more athletic. Before, when I shot football, it wasn't every play wasn't important. Now it seems like every play could be a big play. Like the beginning of the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. That was the opening play where the ball that got the safety, and that changed the game. That was one of the opening plays. So it's a much faster game. There's a lot more going on, and so it was a steep learning curve for me coming in. Trying to see things differently, like Joe and John and Aaron. Trying to document not only the action, but the big stories around it. Obviously, this was a big moment for Annabelle Bolin and Pat Bolin, who's no longer on the fields. And learning how to follow focus and following the players as they're running towards you, and it was definitely a big learning experience. And I feel really lucky to have been able to do that. And here's Wolf again. He's a great guy to shoot because he really celebrates when he's had a big play. And this was, which was the Patriots game when it snowed. So that was a big, and what I've also been impressed with, when we have, obviously, we shoot the entire game, and we have what's called runners, and they'll come and pick up our cards at 4 minutes or 8 minutes at the end of each quarter. And so they're running the cards back to the editors, and the editors are going through it. So the way that the editors, we're trying to edit on the back of our camera, looking for the photo that is the sharpest or the best action. We voice tag it to say, this is, second down, 4 yards were gained, so-and-so did a sack. And so it's a lot of work. So when they get the photo, the card in the back, they at least have some idea of what's going on, what quarter it was, who was in the play. But it creates a lot more work. It wasn't like that 13 years ago. We just shot, and so there's a lot more going on as we edit. And yet again, I'm trying to follow, trying to find photos that are not just pure action. But things happen quickly, and so every time I would try and look at what these guys shot and try and shoot something differently the next time, and I learned so much throughout the entire season. It was humbling and a great experience, and that was one of the better. Same thing. There were a couple of this one. Not many people got because he got spun around, and it was sort of the play of the game, one of the plays of the game where basically he got hit. Joe loves those shots when the quarterbacks are getting hammered, and Roethlisberger got hammered in that game. He was absolutely hammered. So, and this was at the AFC Championships. It's kind of crazy on the field afterward. There's a lot of running around. And then players. And, it's always cool to be part of a team that's winning, right? Everybody loves a team that wins. And it's just, you could see the fans are so excited, and so it was a pretty cool opportunity to have been a part of it this year, and I'm very appreciative. And the second person who was a part of it, who isn't normally, is Eric Lutzens, and he will talk to you. He did editing as well as shooting, and so he can tell you his experience.
So for those of you that don't know, I am a multimedia producer here at the paper. And multimedia encompasses video, stills, editing, production, but does not include speaking in front of a crowd. So I apologize in advance if I say something stupid. This is typically what it looks like when we're at the stadium editing. You kind of bury yourself in with your headphones, and you don't talk much. You just kind of grind away. You're looking at thousands and thousands of images. That's Megan there on the left, and all the staff shooters behind us making sure we pick the right stuff. This was before one of the games. Joe loves this photo. He thinks I look like a Shriner. I was really just using his lens hood to protect my head from the snow. Not much hair going on up here, guys. So, Aaron just kind of threw that one in there. Okay, this picture has a story behind it. Everybody's been talking about quadrants. There have been a couple of games early on where John was not there and we didn't have the third quadrant quite covered. So the quadrants, if you picture this as the field, that being east, this being west, north, south, and a phone. This area here would be covered by one photographer, that area up there by one, and then another photographer here, and the fourth there. So this area over here in the upper left was an area that was uncovered, and I had a chance to run out and shoot for about 3 minutes before I had to go back in and edit. I happened to be in the right place at the right time and shot this fumble and sack of Manning, and I haven't lived it down yet. Everybody gives me such a hard time because I shot 109 frames and got a cover photo out of it. They still give me a hard time. So, yeah, that's that frame. I approached shooting these, I think I shot 4 games, maybe 5. 5? 6? Oh, I shot 6. Wow, that's half the season. I kind of approached it as being an editor. So I did a lot of editing in camera. I did not get on the motor drive like I used to. Much like Helen, I was, oh man, I can't even remember my age. I've been at the paper for 22 years. I probably shot football last in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it's been a long time. But I've edited constantly throughout the years. So shooting it as an editor, you kind of shoot a little bit less. You don't get on the motor drive. You don't shoot plays that you know are going to be kind of going away from you. You obviously trust in the other photographers that are on the other end of the field. They're going to pick it up for you. They're going to get what is needed. So these are just some action frames that I liked out of the season. Like I said, I'm shooting with the staff. I mean, these guys are amazing photographers. So to come in and be able to shoot next to them and have your work presented beside theirs it was just awesome. It was amazing to be down on the field. I've been on the field a bunch for, running discs, editing, that kind of thing, but actually shooting a full game was something that was pretty fresh and new to me. Here's Peyton getting crushed. And Joe's favorite mascot. You're always looking, like John said at the beginning, for something different, something, when action's not going on, you turn around, you're shooting fans, you're looking for any other type of image you can pull out to make it interesting. All right, I think Aaron's up.
So as we said before, we do a fair amount of travel, and usually the airport's pretty busy, but we didn't see anything like this. Every flight basically out of Denver for that week was to one place, or one area rather. It's generally a pretty easy trip, straight there, 800 miles or so by air. But it gets a little difficult and a little cumbersome when you go from shooting with a kit like this, which is our typical kit that we would take on the road for a game with one of us, to carrying 500 pounds of gear. And in this frame right here, this is Eric's Xterra, and that's just the gear that 3 people took. And I don't remember exactly how much that particular setup weighed, but I mean, you can see there his shocks were pretty roughed up afterwards. This is our staff photographer, RJ, sitting next to everyone's bags there on the sidewalk before we were about to board a bus to go to the Super Bowl. And you can see he was originally 6'3", but now he's probably about 3'6" after carrying all that gear. If you look closely enough, you can see him grimacing. And so that's kind of what we deal with in traveling, is trying to get all this stuff from one place to the other and making sure it gets there all in one place. So it's a big process and a lot of teamwork, getting everyone on the same page, making sure their gear is packed properly, having gear that works, and having backup gear that also works. This was probably more gear than I've ever seen taken to a game, but we obviously needed it. As we went to the Super Bowl, 10 of us went on the trip, 5 of us were shooters, there were 3 editors, and 2 assistants doing various things. So I can let Eric and Joe talk about this next. This was the week leading up to the Super Bowl, in which they got to mingle with some of the players, the media types, the athletes, the fans, that all kind of converged on San Francisco and just made it a hectic, chaotic scene.
Eric, me, Vince, and Steve, right? Don, that's right. All got to go out here early because there are a bunch of Super Bowl events going on. The problem with it is Santa Clara would normally be about an hour away from where we were staying. With all of the, good God, thousands and thousands of people that went out there, it turned into an hour and a half, 2-hour drive in very heavy traffic. We weren't actually allowed in the stadium because of the work they were doing. They kept us locked out as much as possible. One of the things we did get to do was to talk to the player with, again, thousands and thousands of people around. Making the images here was actually just amazingly hard, unless you wanted to shoot cameras and photographers and news people. One of the things we did get to do, not that the police had anything to do with us, that was just, the people guarding the event centers. We got to hang out one evening at, I can't remember the name of the place. Exploratorium had all this weird science stuff for adults to go act like fools. And we certainly did. We had no problem falling into these things. We were there I got to be there for the guys showing up. I didn't shoot Peyton. I don't know what I was thinking. But I did shoot this man. I thought that was hilarious. And really after that, I got to shoot Peyton constantly. He'd come out and talk, but again, he's talking to hundreds and hundreds of people, answering the same question over and over again for a whole week. The stadium, the National Guard, they actually had them out and had them out for a while. This sort of worried me when I first got there. I gave it a look. But cheerleaders were there. They got to travel around in this cool bus. And it was just before the game, just a few days before the game, they actually had a big rally down there for the Broncos. The 49ers have a huge following there, and those guys seem to be at everything, and I hardly saw any Broncos fans. It was sort of weird. So when they finally came out and showed, I had a great time. We finally got to make pictures of our boys and the cheerleaders. And so the week up there, it's a whole lot of work, a whole lot of driving. Eric and Vincent Dawn spent all their time on Radio Row, and normally you have players, celebrities. This year was pretty strange. There was a lot of hard work, and it seemed like little return because the general public had been allowed in, and it kept a lot of people away because normally they're back where the celebrities and players have room, and there was no room this year. And so, with ending that incredibly stressful week, everybody else showed up, I think it was Friday, and Helen gets to tell you about all 10 of us living together.
So we're swapping around a lot because there were quite a few people on this fun week in San Francisco. And so I don't know if you had heard, obviously, hotels were incredibly expensive and flights and everything. Everybody wants to go to the Super Bowl. And so luckily, I don't know how many of you expected the Broncos to go to the Super Bowl? Anyone? Anyone? But Megan, realizing that it could potentially happen, got tickets to go and before they'd even won the AFC Championship. And then booked a house because hotels were going for $800. The Media Hotel the weekend of the Super Bowl was going for $1,200 a night. So we could not afford that as a little newspaper. So we got this house. There's Joe waking up in the morning, perhaps. Anyway, so we fit 10 people inside this house, and it was really a great way to go. It's VRBO, is the way we did it, and it was a really nice, much nicer way of doing it. So we all could be together in this house and not in hotel rooms and driving all over the place. And so this is our videographer, Steve Neff, who liked to sleep a lot and worked a lot. And here are the guys cuddling up. This is RJ on the left and John in the middle. Or you're right, RJ's on the right. But it's a little, kind of a funky little house. I mean, people, I don't know, I'm sure you guys know VRBO, but this house is pretty cool. It was beautiful, all these antiques, and so we slept on couches and in rooms, and we had a little bit of downtime, so we got a little bit of time to go look at the. We were really close to the Golden Gate Bridge. Anyone guess who this might be? Anyone? It was John, John's head. So we took his day just to go check out the scenery and see what San Francisco's like. Here's RJ doing his thing. And then the morning of the Super Bowl started at 4:30 in the afternoon, but it took 2 hours to get there. The media went, you couldn't drive, obviously, on your own, so we had to take a big bus. And there's a place, I don't know if you know San Francisco, but the Moscone Center is where the media was being held. And so everybody had to go down there and get on buses. So we got there, I think, at 7:30 in the morning. And this are the faces of after waiting 3 hours to get on the bus. We finally get on the bus. And this is going to the bus. And here we are arriving at the stadium, which is pretty cool. But it was chaos, even in the morning, and media, and everything's locked down, and it was really quite a scene. And so you'll get a little bit of taste of that. And I'm going to give it to Eric, who's going to explain what this, we're getting a sneak peek into what it looks like in the media and the editing area where the photographers are.
So this will be real quick. I did several time lapses in the media workroom. Actually, this was just the still photographer's workroom. This was not TV. So it gives you kind of a sense of the chaos. The particular one we picked out of all that I did was at the end of the game. So all the photographers are coming rushing back in, and they're going to turn in their stuff, and we edit it and continue to get it back to the office. So I've just got some quick numbers for you here. Let's see. During that game in particular, we sat around and added up all of the numbers last night. Maybe I can find them. We've got so many numbers. Megan and I were the editors. I edited 15,700 frames during that game. Megan edited 12,900 for a total of 28,600 frames in one game. I sent back 155 frames to the office, and Megan sent back 160. So, during the opening video, we had a total, and yes, we did sit down last night, and we added everything up. We carried the 1, subtracted the 6, multiplication, fingers, toes, the whole works. 217,980 frames for the season. So, gives you an idea how much we shoot and how awesome these guys are at what they do. You know, that dedication they have to being out in the freezing cold and the heat, just constantly shooting and picking out everything they can possibly find. Sorry, I left that blank up there. So, we've got Big Boss here defeating Old Boss. He's walking away in shame. Sorry, Tim, if you're watching on the live stream. Yeah. Here's John again.
How do I follow that? Tim who, anyway? Who's that guy? This next section is going to show you all the Super Bowl stuff and the Super Bowl from my perspective. I chose to go up high this year, only because it was really hard for me to walk anywhere, or much less stand for a whole game. So I decided to take an overhead position. And my overhead position was on the 40-yard line behind the Panthers bench, which was great because I got to see across the field to the Broncos bench. So, and there was about, I would say, 15 photographers up in that upper position. And from the upper position, I'm shooting with an 800 millimeter lens for pretty much most of the game. For the game, we had 2 upper positions. I was on the side, and Helen was up in the end zone, in the, I believe it was the south end zone, overhead, and she had the other 800 millimeter lens. And Joe and Aaron were down on the field. And you know, I always get a question, how come, you know, you covered the game with 4 people on the field, but you didn't get 4 credentials for the field at the Super Bowl? Well, it doesn't work that way. I wish it did, but it doesn't. They generally just give you maybe 2 shooting positions on the field for a Super Bowl, because there are so many other photographers there from different organizations. Not only the host city gets pretty much what they want, and then we're, you know, being the home paper, they usually get us, you know, 2 field passes, and then Aaron and Joe had those. By the way, I heard that they're going to introduce a Peyton Manning rule. I don't know if anybody heard this, but in the last game against was the Steelers, I think it was, where Manning fell to the ground and got back up and threw the ball, and they had a first down on it. They're introducing a Peyton Manning rule where that's not allowed anymore. Once the quarterback goes down, he's gonna, the ball's, it's dead. It's a dead play. So, sorry, Bronco fans. And you know, a lot of this stuff is, you know, from my overhead position was really cool for me, because it was the first time I've ever shot from overhead like this, and it gave a whole new perspective on shooting football. And you see everything on the field. And probably the best photo I came out from the Super Bowl for me was this shot here. Yeah, I was so happy when I saw this on the back of my camera. I just wanted to leave, but I knew I couldn't. Yeah, I guess I'll stick around for the rest of the game. And here's the 2-point conversion from overhead as well. You know, shooting from the field level, oftentimes enough you get players in front of you that block you, and you can't see what really goes on, and you always end up getting the back of this play or something. But from overhead, you can see everything. It's a lot of anticipation from shooting up top too. You just have to kind of watch the way where Manning was throwing, and then you just kind of have to follow, his eyes per se, and follow the ball to that player. And this is from across the field. If I didn't have the 800 millimeter lens, I probably wouldn't have, gotten this shot. I think Kubiak was asking him if he's going to retire. And, throughout the game, you try to come up with different ways of shooting the game. And I had a wide-angle lens up top at the end of the game and shot this from my position with a wide angle, showing all the confetti. And believe it or not, there was a Carolina fan that was sitting in front of me. And he wasn't sitting, he stood the whole game. So he was kind of blocking myself and 3 other photographers throughout the whole game. So when I chose this overhead position, I told Megan, man, that's going to be great. I'm going to be overhead. I'm going to have a seat. I'm going to be able to sit down and enjoy shooting the game. No, this guy stood up the whole game, and all of us up on that top row had to stand up the whole game too, because we had to shoot around him. And we kept asking him to sit down. We asked nicely, but it got to a point where he turned around and just gave us the finger and said, yeah, I paid for my seat. And I said, well, sit in it, But when that clock hit 0, he started walking out, and 4 of us photographers up there said, see ya, loser, bye. He didn't like that. He turned around and gave us a bird again. So at this point of the jubilation for the Broncos, I decided to try to get something showing dejection. I love dejection shots for some reason. So I was frantically looking for Cam Newton, and I couldn't see him because he had gone out and shook a few hands and then just walked off. And I finally spotted him walking off with his head down. And this is right before he went into the tunnel to go into the locker room. You can imagine tears running down his face. I can. And being in the overhead position, at the end of the game, I'm like, man, I'm so glad I'm up here. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff on the field. I don't want to get trampled. And as you can see, Manning was surrounded by tons of photographers and stuff. It was kind of funny because everywhere Peyton started to walk, you see this big wad of people just move like this. It was really cool. It was kind of weird at the same time. And then he would stop and everybody would stop. Then he'd move a couple of feet and everybody would move. And you can see Joe in there. I think that's Joe over here on the side over here. See his hair? And then being in the overhead position again, you get a pretty clear view of the trophy celebration and stuff. And I had fun at this Super Bowl, even if it was shooting from overhead. It was a win. Everybody was happy. The Bronco people weren't grouchy, weren't telling us, hey, you got to get out now, that kind of thing. But I think this will probably be a long time coming. We probably won't see this again for a while. I don't think, at least I don't think so. I think my Raiders are going to sneak in the back door. Then you got some behind-the-scenes things after the game. I waited outside the locker room at the end of the game for about, 45 minutes, an hour. See Peyton Manning in his pimp suit. But going back to, it was really, really fun to see and to work next to all these guys here, because you got to see a lot of really, really interesting stuff that they shoot. that I would never see. And that's why it's really cool to have 4 photographers out there, because everybody has a really unique eye of shooting stuff. You know, Aaron surprises me all the time. He comes back with all this featurey kind of stuff. And it's really, really cool. And then Helen comes in her first year, and she shows that she can do it, you know. And Joe, he nails it all the time, especially when he's on the road. And it was a fun season, and I'm glad to be back. So hopefully this season I'll be able to stay healthy and enjoy another Super Bowl run maybe, or at least the playoffs, because the Raiders are sneaking in the back door. And I'm going to hand it over to Aaron.
And so, like John said, he got to go up top and shoot a lot of the stuff from above. And I was down low. The last Super Bowl, I was up in the stands shooting from the elevated position and shooting. So it was kind of fun to get down on the field and get to go shoot all this stuff. I got to go out for the coin flip here and shoot Peyton as he was preparing to get out to do his thing. Cam saying his prayers before things went awry. Got to see some of the nice, tight details that you get only from field level. Vaughn licking his chops, waiting to put a hand on this guy. And, of course, he got his hand on him a few times. What I really like about the ground level position is it's a really just kind of dominant angle. You really get right up in the action and see how big these guys are, how fast they're moving, how fierce the competition is at eye level. And it's fun because you get to get close to the players and shoot some stuff that's a little bit different, not just action, kind of sideline stuff. You can see the killer eyes there on Derek Wolf. Just more general action from field level. I mean, this was kind of the story of the game, just this guy getting pummeled over and over and over again. I'm sure we have, of those 15,000 photos or whatever Eric said, about 14,000 of him on his head or some other position on his body. And just some general action from the game and moving around and getting to see the details and the interactions of the plays. This was, I think, when Derek Wolf hit him in the end zone, and he was expecting to get a roughing the passer call, but the ref was like, I have no pity for you. And then, again, just sort of some of the dejection at eye level. When the game was pretty much all but wrapped up, you kind of get these moments happening everywhere on the field in front of you, and it's just kind of nice to be able to see it. I do envy John, however, being in the elevated position for the scrum. I was telling someone here earlier that, you know, I got in it as it was happening, and everyone pushed together, and it was so tight, and you just kind of get moved around by the crowd of people because it's so tight down there that I probably could have lifted my feet up off the ground and just kind of stuck to the crowd and kept moving along with them. There was a point in the action when I saw that Joe was near me, and so I just stopped shooting and was trying to shove him forward, like from behind, trying to get him any closer to getting a shot that we could. There was just complete chaos down there. So when all that's going on, I just kind of moved around and got to the side. Everyone was off to the front, kind of the podium, jockeying for position. And I knew Joe was in that mix, so I started looping around the back side of the stage. And no one was back there, surprisingly, just me and a bunch of the players' moms. And we were over off to the side, and I stood with them while they took the pictures with their phones, and they had a pretty good angle on it. I guess moms know what's up and know where to get the good shots. And then RJ Sangosti, who is maybe in the audience, maybe not. He didn't show up to speak tonight. He was there, and he's an artist, so he shot some different types of stuff. He shot these composites throughout the week of the Super Bowl, and he had an elevated position also. And what I found really cool about what RJ did during this weekend is he tracked his steps to see how much he had walked, and he walked 26,000 steps, which is about 8.5 miles around Levi's Stadium to get all the pictures that he got from the weekend. And he got some really cool stuff that absolutely no one else got, as far as I've seen so far. He walked the back hallways and got these images of the dancers doing their thing and stretching, which is one of my favorite pictures from the whole Super Bowl. It has nothing to do with the game, really. I just thought it was a fun picture. He got into the action and saw the fans doing their thing. I didn't know bad taste was a crime, but apparently in San Francisco it is. And then, like John said, everyone has a unique eye and a unique vision of what's going on. So you can see RJ here shot a little bit wider, and some of the shots you'll see later were a little bit tighter. So it was just fun getting to have everyone in the mix, bringing their vision to it, and giving a variety to the entire experience. And then RJ's celebration shot. He didn't shoot much of the action. He just mostly shoots the peripherals, but he ended up getting this really cool shot here of Vaughn celebrating the dousing of the coach. And with that, I'll bring back Helen, who will talk about her elevated position.
So as John said, elevated is the key word, because I was up on probably the highest you could possibly go in the stadium. I think I was on the 7th level. And Megan joked that she's like, well, at least we got you a seat for the game. Because it was kind of a shooting position, but I was blocked by a lot of TV cameras that come down behind. I don't know if you see this, the cameras that come down and they shoot the action, and the goalposts, and so it was definitely challenging. But it's also great to be above because you do get stuff that no one else does. And I don't know if they introduce all the quarterbacks from all the years every year. And so this is when John came out, and they had Joe Montana, and they had, and that was from above. So it's a unique position. It is a really unique. It's a different way of shooting. It's less intimate, I think, but you can see faces sometimes more. You do see the stripes. So it's a little more challenging. My fear, I had an 800, which is, I don't know if you know, it's a huge lens. And my seat was literally the very, very top rung, and I was right up against the circle, and so you look down, straight down to the people below you, and I was scared to death that I was going to drop something and literally kill somebody. So luckily that didn't happen, but that was kind of a concern because you're so high. But here's Cam Newton getting pummeled by the defense, the Denver Bronco defense, and so that's kind of a unique, it's a little bit different. I think actually what was best was the halftime show. This is Coldplay. And so that was kind of, I don't think any of the guys from the field could get this because they were too low and there were so many people. So this was actually the best position for shooting the halftime show. And that's what's his name from Coldplay? Yes, exactly. So that was fun when he jumped. I'm like, oh, that was so cool, he jumped. So it was kind of fun. So Beyonce and her dancers, and it was a pretty good show. I don't know what you guys thought, but I thought it was really well produced. I wasn't sure if they were lip syncing. Do you think they were lip syncing? Or really singing? And this is afterward. Yet again, I had a super wide angle, and I kind of wish I'd had a fisheye, and it wasn't as much confetti as I thought it was going to be, but it was still a lot of confetti, and it was just chaos, and it was kind of interesting watching from above. And so you get this is the kind of stuff you get from above. And same thing, it's not super close, as you can see how many people, and this is just a single player. It's not even Peyton Manning. So, there are a lot of people on the field. But it's a unique position. I'd never been above before, and so that was it was a challenge for sure. And this is during the halftime show with all the colors. And they had the fans. They put placards on the seats. So everybody put their placards up, but they instructed at the beginning of the game. And so when it started, that's why they all had the colors. It was almost like the Olympics. They were told what to do, and so it made for a more colorful stadium. And then more Cam Newton. Poor Cam Newton. Dick Wolf. And I thought this was kind of cute, where it says world. I don't know if you can see it, but it says world champs. I don't know if that's so they wrote it on there, but it says world champs on the middle of it. So that was kind of cute. So I'll give you to Joe Amon and show his version of the Super Bowl, and he was on his level. So they only allowed two people on the field, and so Joe was the second one on the field.
So I got to start off by watching Cam pray. And then the rest of the animals waiting to come out. I like the field. I love being there. The thing that happened in this game that doesn't usually happen is actually John got the shot of the game from that elevated position that usually most of us get it and all we do is cry about it. Got to shoot from up there and can't see nothing. He got the one picture of the game. I thought that was amazing. I like this one because I can see Cam's face as hope dies. I love this. I also got to see these big guys score. I did happen to see this. I don't know. That was a little bit of a pull there. And I got to see this here touchdown too. And I'll tell you what, I can't cry. That was cool, being behind that. I know they scored, but good God, man. I talked about Mr. Thomas earlier. I got to see him lose some weight there because he got tagged. And even just running down Cam, I have to say, I enjoyed this, you guys. And watching Vaughn in this game, I don't know why we call him Vaughn like he's our buddy, but that was an amazing performance. The man was everywhere. It was something something to see, and especially something to be that close to. This is for Pat, and then this. Didn't know we had this image through the first edit. I was trying something new with my camera, and he finally got that, and I started shooting and found out I had almost black frames. I had definitely screwed up the exposure. After, when we were looking for a cover for the ceremonial issue, Megan happened to find this and pull it out. And I was the happiest dude at the paper because I had me a picture. I was like, yes. And watching these guys at the end, seeing them with their families, and we actually got to shoot a bunch. You know, the excitement of being on the field with them is just amazing. This is our celebration. There is still another set of slides that we have to go through, and I can't remember who's up next. I don't like talking. Our travel back, I can't remember how many hours, but we couldn't get a flight. We had someone get sick on our flight crew, so I know it was at least 5 hours. 6 hours? So all of us in the airport having fun for 6 hours. Vince actually had a whole bunch of the cords, and I think he was actually selling time on to all the other people that were there stuck with us. And next comes the parade. Now we didn't get home till like 4:30 in the morning. Eric and Vince came straight here, set up all their stuff for the parade, slept in the office for 2 hours, and then went back out first thing in the morning because they had a parade so early. We had to be there for our work. I know this is RJ from the helicopter, and I love this image. That boy is just a serious shooter. And then getting there, I'll tell you, Peyton's head's like everywhere. It's a thing, man. So we all got to take pictures. We all had different points through here shooting, and I'm pretty sure the whole staff was shooting this. We just barely got to walk with some of it from the road. But these pictures are from everybody. And I have to say, it is pretty cool. I mean, you know. I do believe Mr. Leyva snuck up behind the stage. I don't know how he gets away with this stuff. It's just crazy. And then, to end it all, John and I went and shot Peyton retiring. And I got to say, I was really glad when Peyton came here. I've liked him since college. It was amazing to have a chance to shoot this man for the last 4 years. What a face. And then walking off the stage with his son. And that ends his NFL career. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it.
So we're going to take some questions, if you guys have any. Not for me, for them. Anybody? Sure, go ahead. God, I wouldn't even be able to guess. Oh no, I'd say like thousands. Oh yeah. Want to take one? Oh, there were a bunch. I mean, so the way that the credentials work for the season is we have relationships with Broncos PR people, and we put in for our credentials at the beginning of the season. Then for the Super Bowl, all those credentials go through the NFL offices and not the Broncos. So that it all changes. And everyone had badges for everything. I'm pretty sure I saw a photographer from HGTV at the Super Bowl. So, I mean, there's no shortage. It's everybody. We do get more than most people. We got more than ESPN, right? Oh, yeah.
Nikki and Cameron, can you guys come up, please?
Yeah, we have the writers here, too, if you guys have any questions for them. So, yeah, we get a fair number of credentials. We always ask for more, but they shut us down at 10 this year. I would have had more people if they would have let us.
What was funny going to the Super Bowl, the reporters always had asked me, hey, did you guys make room arrangements? I said, yeah. I go, did you? He goes, yeah, I was staying at the hotel downtown. I said, we have a house, and it's by the Golden Gate Bridge. It's pretty cool. It's like, that's one of our perks, that the photo department gets to do what we want to do, and the sports department has to listen to their boss. So if you have any questions for Nikki and Cameron, Nikki covers the Broncos on a daily basis, and Cameron kind of fills in once in a while, but does a really good job, doing all the special reporting on some of the players and stuff. So here's Nikki and Cameron.
Hello. For both of us, this is kind of our first year on the beat. I was on the editing. Can you hear me now? Oh, wow. You really have to put that up there.
Yeah. Like almost touching.
That's so exciting. I was on the editing side before I got put on the Broncos beat, and now I feel a little spoiled because we had a heck of a season for the first year. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun, and I feel like the next one's starting up already, so not much time to rest. But so yeah, our lead guy, Troy Rank, isn't here. He's actually at the NFL owners meetings and talking to Gary Kubiak and Elway and all those guys. So he's in Florida, probably on a beach somewhere. And we are here. So,
anyone else got any questions? What did it cost to cover the Super Bowl? Linda, am I allowed to answer that? Where are you? Okay, I can answer it. She's not here. I don't know what it cost the sports department to cover it. I'm not even totally sure what it cost us to cover it. It was somewhere in the ballpark of $25,000 for our department alone, which was good. They were happy with us. We did good. When we went to New York, I know the total budget, I think it was around $53,000 for the paper to send people. So yeah, they don't pick cheap places to host these things. San Francisco is not easy. Yeah, I look at every picture. Well, I look at everyone I get. Eric looks at everyone he gets, or whoever the second editor is, yeah. It's pretty fast. I mean, I don't know. I think this is my 6th season doing it. It's pretty fast. You know what you're looking for, and it's a tap, 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 tap as you watch them go by. And you also watch the game on the TV, so you know you know, what you don't want to miss. You know the plays that you're looking for. So yeah, takes a while, but yeah. It's probably a bad question to ask right now. We do. We fulfill some more happily than others. Yeah, it's a give and take. I mean, you know, I mean, some of the players are nicer than some others. Is that a nice way to answer that question? The paper and the photographers own. Well, the paper owns the copyright. We cannot resell Broncos photographs. And so normally, if we resold a photograph, the photographers would get half and the paper would get half of those resales. But we can't resell, per the NFL, we can't resell Broncos photographs. All professional sports, actually. Has it changed? I mean, John, you'd probably know more than... It hasn't changed in the time that I've been here. He asked how has we get 10 credentials for the Super Bowl, how has that changed over time?
It hasn't really changed much. It's I think, see, the Super Bowl back against the Falcons, I think we ended up having, we had 5 shooting positions. But then again, there was only 2 allowed on the field, and the others were overhead, and 1 was roaming. So it's about the same. We haven't. It hasn't changed much at all.
I think everyone has a different feel for how things go. We counted up the images last night to see how many frames people shoot in a game. And typically, throughout a contest, I'll shoot like 2,500 images or so. Joe will shoot 4,000 or 5,000. So I think it's just a matter of how much you want to hold down the button. Sometimes it's good to hold less, sometimes it's good to hold more. When I'm shooting, though, I'll definitely hit the motor drive. It'll click off a few times, and I'll get shots. If something's really crazy happening in front of me, I'll just hold it down and shoot and follow the action as stuff's going on. But I'm always trying to look, and when I'm holding down the button for too long, I feel like I stop seeing what's happening. So I like to be able to like refocus and shoot and refocus and shoot. So typically I'll burst off between 3 to 5 frames when the action's happening in front of me. So it'll go, and that's about it. It's just kind of like a reflexive thing at this point where I think everyone has their own method, but I'll hold just for like a reflexive amount of time where I see something happening. Does that help answer the question?
Oh, I was just going to say one thing that I noticed in the 10 years that I wasn't shooting is that we try, at least I try to shoot at a higher shutter speed, like going all the way up to like 2,000, because it slows. Sometimes if you're even at 1,000, when I was sort of normally used to shooting, there would be some motion blur. So trying to always shoot at a higher shutter speed, and so you up your ISO to be able to get a higher shutter speed, and that's what I was doing more of. So in terms of the actual technical side of it.
I guess it just depends also on the person's preference. I like to shoot horizontally a lot in that landscape type format because I mean, that's kind of how you see straight across like this. With a sport like basketball, when the players are jumping straight up into the air, I shoot a lot more vertically because they'll just jump straight out of the frame if you're shooting the wrong way. So you want to give the basketball players enough height to work within the frame of action. But with football, I typically just shoot horizontally. I'll go vertically every once in a while. I know Leba likes to shoot it a little bit more. Just a personal preference, I think, depending on what you like to do. And that's just kind of like how I developed over time, was shooting this way. And I think most people probably shoot like that.
Add one more thing. I think also with experience, what I've noticed is that when the celebration happens, is usually vertical. And so when you're shooting horizontally, you sometimes miss, you'll crop off the heads or their feet. And so these guys who have done a lot, they're really good at switching the camera really quickly. And that's something that comes with just shooting a lot, because it's hard to sort of anticipate that and then to do it quickly. Because I've noticed that when celebrating, arms are in the air, right? People are jumping up. I mean, those guys can jump really high. And so those are vertical shots. And so it's a learning thing. But John's really good at going back and forth. Horizontal, vertical. And so it's sort of challenging.
She asked what kind of cameras we use. Everyone on staff is using either Nikon D4s or D4Ss. I just think that's the standard sports pro line camera that is available. The question's whether we use the viewfinder or the live display on the cameras. For sports, I'm always on the viewfinder looking through the hole. I just think that it blocks everything out around you and you get just like a nice vision of what's happening. Typically, the only time I use the viewfinder is when I switch to video mode and I'm shooting video with something and I look at the back of the camera there. I don't use the live view too often unless I'm putting the camera up above my head where I can't see. Then I'll turn it on to see if it's like framing how I want it to frame. But typically it's all just through the viewfinder.
On the display. Yeah, so you'll look back and that's how you can sort of do editing in your camera, but we're shooting all the time through the eyepiece.
Any additional questions? There's one back there.
Almost every one of those is in the book. Plug for the book. But you can find them we do a gallery every Sunday, so almost all of those will be online. How many we get in the paper? Yeah, a lot of them. $24.95. I put her in the audience.
Now, to go back to talk about Peyton Manning, we know what our experiences were with Peyton. What kind of a what do you say, relationship we had with him. We didn't. For the 4 years that he was here, I was bugging the PR staff to do a portrait of Peyton every year, and I would bug them just about every day at Bronco camp when I was there. And they always say, well, it's not in our best interest. So I kind of blew it off, and then it just got to a point where that's what they were saying all the time. So our relationship with Peyton was pretty much non-existent. But I'd like to know what the relationship the writers had with Peyton Manning. Maybe they can explain to you how they went about, talking to him and getting his perspective on different things on the field.
For me, it was like covering two different teams. You had you had all the Broncos players, which were very easy to access. A couple would come up every week during practice and address the media. The rest would all be available in the locker room. You can't do that with Peyton. He'll have his weekly address to media. He was in the locker room more when he was injured, just to kind of show face and remind you that he was still a part of this team. But for the most part, Peyton's off limits. It's him and his Secret Service, and then the rest of the team. So it was a little bit difficult. I helped out with the Broncos the previous year, and just the year-to-year change, it was significant to me. I thought he was much more honest and candid in his interviews. There's a lot more sarcasm and jokes in his answers, especially when he didn't want to answer something, he'd always just go to a joke. And the year before, he was much more guarded with his answers. So you could see a change in him personally, but just in terms of access, he's kind of tight-roped off. But
yeah, I would tend to agree with Nikki. Like her, this was my first year coming onto the beat, so I had my opinion of Peyton coming in. Of course, he's a great quarterback. But the first time that I met him, it was just kind of it was just all to see how he conducted himself in person. Of course, you talk to players all the time and you interview them, and they all have their cliche answers. But Peyton, he'll let you know if you have a bad question. If you have a bad question, you don't like it, he'll give you his little slug, or he'll throw some shade your way, or he'll give you a deep stare where you're like, okay, I won't ask that again.
Not really into doing evaluations in July. That was my favorite one. Annually, I'm not really into doing evaluations at this time. This is what we're doing.
Are we really going to talk about this on Wednesday and in August?
But the fun thing about interviewing Peyton is if you got the right question, the details he could recall from decades ago, and you think about how many games he's played, it was amazing. I mean, my favorite one was, it was actually last year, but this is when he was close to the 509 record. Somebody asked him, do you remember all the guys who caught only one touchdown pass of yours? He remembered every single one. He remembered every single one and every single play, every game, every location, the weather, the time, everything. And it was fascinating to hear somebody like this. And I remember it was this year, he answered one, and he went into this whole spiel about the Bad News Bears. And it was verbatim. And I went back, I'm like, that was the year he was born. How does he remember this stuff?
Great
So
movie buff.
yeah, so it's fascinating in that regard, at least for me. Makes
Yeah,
for
I
good
think
stories.
my thing, you guys saw it when he was at his retirement press conference, and he went through his first catch. I threw my first pass to Marvin Harrison, and blah, blah, blah. So you just, I forgot what I had breakfast last week, and his memory is just like remarkable. It makes me feel like, But yeah, he's just a great person to cover as far as just an athlete and just an icon. I think we'll look back 5, 10, 15 years from now and see how rare it was to cover somebody like Peyton.
I thought most of his press conferences, I thought his ones in Super Bowl week were the most open he's ever been. I mean, he revealed stuff about the injuries he's endured that he would never talk about. I mean, I can't tell you, gosh, wow. I mean, we would ask him constantly about the numbness in his fingertips. He would always, throw in a joke or do something to change the topic. I mean, he talked about that unsolicited throughout his Super Bowl press conferences. He even revealed that he's probably going to have a hip replaced at some point. And I think when he went into that, we're like, all right, he's done. He's not going to tell us he needs a hip replaced and then ask to come back another season. So, the last few weeks of it all for Peyton, he was much more open in terms of his answers. In terms of access, not really. I mean, the scrum you saw on the field, that's kind of like how it was in the locker room, too. I think Brandon McManus, he tweeted a photo. He's at his locker, which is, literally like 5 feet away. And there's a sea of you guys crowding around him. And it's nuts. I mean, you got guys just trying to get dressed to go on the field. And everybody's crowding. I was standing on a leather couch just trying to see him. So yeah, it's like covering a different team.
Yeah, and to follow up on your question, I think later on in the season, especially towards retirement press conference and the Super Bowl press conference, one thing you guys probably know, and I've learned through covering Peyton, is just he's probably the most calculated and prepared person on and off the field. So if he says a word, best believe that he meant to say it for that particular reason. So I felt like when he had his retirement press conference and Super Bowl press conference, it was more raw than I had ever seen him. You know, his emotions, of course, were collecting, but there was times where you could see he was stumbling over words, and you could see the tears were about to come out, and you really saw him in his natural state. I'm sure he had prepared that speech like 20, 25 times, but you still felt some of the things out of there where it was truly him.
It's much more humanized in those final weeks. God, it sounds like he's died. That's so sad. I thought it was a very fair question. People think we're supposed to be fans. We're reporters. We're just covering the team. We write about what happens. I'm not a Broncos fan, and I don't think the question was mean. I thought she actually gave him a chance to respond to all the criticism that he's faced. And it was a very fair question. I thought he handled it well, which helped him. But everybody says, why didn't you wait till a later time? The guy's retiring. There is no later time. This is the only chance to ask him this. You know, and if she had asked him to the side, it would have been national anyway. So I thought it was a very fair question. I felt for Lindsay because I thought she took a lot of unfair criticism. But she was just doing her job.
Yeah, and you really look at journalism as a whole, and I think that really gets confused, you know, through when you cover a team on a daily basis, you develop relationships with the people, and you kind of have to balance that boundary. But at the end of the day, we're trying to tell the story. We're trying to present to the audience things. And I think as a journalist, with me growing up, some of the best questions are the questions that they don't want to answer. Because in general, that's what we want to hear. We're not PR machines in a sense. We don't work for the Broncos. So we're not going to ask, hey, you know, why are you guys so great? You know, our job is to ask, you know, why did this happen? Why did you yell at him? Or why is this abuse, you know, coming up? Why are these questions? So, yeah, Lynn's is one of my friends as well as Nick. So just to see some of the abuse she got from that was just remarkable. I think the biggest thing, I talked to a few Broncos players and people there, and they were upset by the timing of it, just like you said. And the thing that she told me is there wasn't a clear guideline that there was going to be communications after the presser, that they were going to be able to talk to Peyton. So this might be the last time. Who knows what Peyton goes into a shell for 5 years and never talks again. You know, this is the last chance that she had to ask the question, and I thought she was very much in her right to ask it.
I'm going on eBay tonight to check to see if you're...
Just to go back real quick about Peyton's retirement. Let me tell you how powerful Peyton Manning was at that facility. When Joe and I arrived at the retirement, the PR guys came up to us and said, "Okay, this comes from Manning. This is not us. This comes from Manning. Don't shoot the kids or my wife or any of the family." And we said, "What?" I said, "Whose rule is that?" He goes, "The Manning rule. Family is off limits." So that goes to show you how powerful this guy was at the facility. You know, even the PR person couldn't, you know, tell Manning, "Hey, this is your last hurrah. You're going out on top. You know, just, you know, let it go." You know, we see the cameras pointed at the family, you're going to get kicked out. So that was one of the things that we, and before the press conference even started, I went up to Patrick, the head of the PR. I said, hey, Patrick, how about that portrait shoot now with 1-8? And he looks at me and goes, John, you know that's not going to happen. I'm like, yeah, it's not in our best interest. And I walked away. And he didn't like that comment, but but that's the way the whole 4 years went with that team. And Manning kind of ruled what we did, even at practices. He told us where to stand, where to shoot from, and stuff like that. So, see ya. My Raiders are making a comeback. You stretch the boundaries sometimes. You get as close as you can. You put a wide angle lens. You go right up to their grill. Some players like it. Some players will play up to you. If the player knows you, throughout the season you kind of get a good rapport with some of the players, and you know who to go photograph with that kind of thing. Because they like you, and they also know that you can give them pictures. They're your friends, when they want pictures, but when it comes to other things, they don't want anything to do with you. Good example, Aaron was on the road in Foxborough, and Manning had a horrible day and on the sidelines, and I'll let Aaron talk about that. It sounds good coming from him.
So there's a line that we're not allowed to cross on the field. It's very clearly put down on every field across the NFL. It's dotted, it's yellow, you know where it's at, you know where you can go and you can't go. So I was right up on the line taking pictures of Peyton. New England had just gone for a 2-point conversion, and the game was pretty much over, so they just were going for it for whatever reason, just to run plays. And I was photographing on the sidelines, maybe from like me to Joe of Peyton, taking some shots of him towards the bench. And he noticed that I started shooting. He walked from over where he was and hovered over me. He's like 2 feet taller than me. And he said something. I can't repeat it really. But he basically told me to get lost, and then had his security guys stand in front of me so I couldn't shoot photos anymore. Like they stood about this far away. And somehow they were shorter than I was, so I just was shooting right over the tops of their heads.
You know what? I'll let the reporters answer that.
There's a relationship between Brock and Peyton. I think that's why Brock is in Houston. I mean, they spent a lot of time together. They were obviously in positional meetings together. But you look at it from both perspectives. I mean, Peyton was the starter. His role was very clearly defined until the end when he got injured. And Brock, for 3.5 years, just sat. So you can understand why one would be a little frustrated, maybe a little bitter, and one just doesn't care. You hear stories. They're very cordial around each other. They're very cordial with each other to us. So, I was never told anything directly. Brock has always raved about his time with Peyton and thanked him for having the chance to learn from him. And I think he did. I mean, 3.5 years with that guy. I mean, everybody says it's good to be thrown into the fire as a rookie, but not if you get your butt kicked all the time. So to have a guy like Peyton who can actually show you what you're looking at, I think is helpful. But it was a long time, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to describe Peyton and Brock's relationship to me, I think it was last year. I think it was a game, the Broncos were up like 30, and Brock was supposed to come in to replace him. And and he was about to run onto the field with his helmet on, and Peyton went back on the field, and Brock throws his hands up like, I can't get a break, It's like football is the most competitive sport, in my opinion, that there is. And, he was tired of waiting. You always look at the guy who's ahead of you, right on top of you. And I think that was the relationship. Of course, I love learning from you. You're all-time great. But at the end of the day, I want to play, And that was his mindset. And I think Brock was very PR savvy, like most quarterbacks are, so he wasn't going to say anything outlandish. But we definitely got the vibe that Brock preferred if he was playing rather than Peyton.
I think you have to think like that if you're in the NFL. I think that's why everybody harkens back to that San Diego game. Was he bitter about being benched? Well, yeah, wouldn't you be? I mean, he led them to a 5-2 run, and he thought he was better at the time. So. I mean, he told us he preferred the term seasoned. At the start of the season, everybody was talking about his age, which frankly is old in football years. So he told us he preferred seasoned. There's only so many times that you can use the term seasoned in copy. But the underlying story of the entire season was, is this going to be it? So yes, his age, is this his final year? Is he going to ride off into the sunset just like John Elway did? That was the theme of the entire year, so it's hard to avoid it. When you're talking about age for a 39-year-old player, it's like par for the course. I mean, it's not insulting. It's just a matter of fact. You're 39. You're the oldest starting quarterback to win a Super Bowl. You have to bring it up. It's just part of the story. It's not meant to, be a dig. Oh, my God, you're old. Look how old you are out there. It's just part of the story,
Yeah. I don't know if he sees it that way, but I think it's a little bit of a tribute in a sense, because you look at a guy for 17 years was at the top of pinnacle of his game and was so great that when he goes the other way, we got to write it. It's perspective. You look at a guy who broke all these records for Broncos, all-time leading passer, and he went through 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions this year. If he was bad, we got to write that he's bad. If he plays like he's old and injured, we've got to write that he's old and injured. I'm not Peyton's friend, so I'm going to write how he performs. I think you just kind of look at everything as a perspective, and your question about whether the players read stuff like Peyton reads our stuff, everything, and the players read it. So like they'll come in and if you write something good, they'll tell you, they'll notice, and if you write something bad, they usually don't say anything, but they'll give you a look, and but you're there. I mean, you're there every day. So whether they like it or not, they have the right to come up to it, talk to you. If I said anything incorrect or factually incorrect, tell me. If not, then we'll continue to do our job. Yeah, I mean, he played well that week. He didn't play well the previous weeks. He didn't play well against Kansas City. I mean, he threw 4 interceptions that game. That was the game where he broke the passing record, but then got benched for Brock. I think you just kind of look at, and he would agree, whether he say it on the record, that this was his worst performance, of his career as far as statistically and on-field performance. But at the end of the day, he got a ring, and he went out the way he wanted to do. And I think more of fans and more of us as a audience will remember him for all the records he broke, that he won 2 Super Bowls, and he was a great quarterback, than his last year where he kind of, lack of a better word, limped to the finish. So I mean, I think it's perspective. No quarterback is going to have all great years, and this wasn't one of his better years. So we told that story.
Yards in the Super Bowl. Keeb Tilly brought that up in week 1, so it wasn't just us. But I think we made a concerted effort to kind of keep it even keel throughout the season. Yes, he had a great game against Green Bay. It was the best they had as a team all season, but we knew the fan perception is, oh my God, he's great, he's back, he's healthy, all is right in the world. And we know how quickly that can change. I mean, even Peyton said, when he came back for the San Diego game, he said, these are the same fans that booed me off the field. So we're well aware that, public perception can change within an instant. So I hope we did a decent job of just trying to, maintain an even keel on how we cover him game to game, because there were some drastic changes from him especially throughout the season.
All right, thanks, guys. One more thing. I have one book to give away. So whoever's name I read off that's actually still in the room, you get the book. Neil Kesselman. All right, first one. You get a book. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. There's books outside and cheesecake leftovers, I'm sure. Thank you.